This is a breakdown of the Vanzan entities and debunking the clerical error myth circulating. Please pause to read the important disclaimer. In 2008, Vanzan was formed in Delaware by Eric Rothschild. This original entity is the starting point for all later developments involving the Vanzan name. In 2010, Vanzan was registered as a foreign corporation in California, meaning the Delaware entity was authorized to do business in the state. Eric Rothschild was listed as the agent. This later became the focus of legal issues of the company mismanaging private data of others. A separate Vanzan entity was incorporated in New York in 2019. There are no official documents connecting this New York entity to either the Delaware or California entities. The only overlap between the California and New York entities is the use of Blake and Ryan's business management firm as a business address. This is administrative, not legal proof of connection. In 2024 there was the Doe lawsuit using the NY entity which didn't have Blake's name legally attached to it in filings. Then on June 30, 2025, shortly after Abel asked for a motion to compel Vanzan for their communications and documents detailing their structure, Ryan Reynolds declares he is CEO of Vanzan, creating their first tie in a filing to the entity they used to subpoena Jones. This breaks down the connections and disconnections between the Vanzan entities. First, the California filings explicitly reference Delaware Incorporation, listing the Delaware file number and registration date. Blake Lively was listed as CEO in 2021, but because no Delaware revival certificate was ever filed, the California entity and her attempt to attach herself to it lacks legal standing. Second, there's no legal connection between the California and New York entities. There are no merger documents, asset transfers, or filings linking them, and the New York entity's records show no reference to Delaware or California. Finally, while both entities used Ryan Reynolds' business management firm as an address, this is purely administrative and does not serve as legal proof of any connection. In September 2024, Lively's legal team filed a lawsuit through the New York Vanzan entity against unnamed Doe defendants. This allowed them to subpoena Jennifer Abel's phone data, while concealing Lively's involvement by using Vanzan Inc. as the plaintiff. After obtaining the data, the lawsuit was quietly dismissed in December 2024, before Baldoni's team even knew it existed. Baldoni's lawyer described this as a sham lawsuit and a clear abuse of legal process. These are the key legal implications for Blake Lively. First, by using the New York entity while having no formal role, at least until Ryan Reynolds was listed as CEO in 2025, it suggests an intentional effort to hide who was really in control. This opens the door to alter ego liability. Second, if internal communications reveal that Blake actually directed the lawsuit despite lacking an official title, that could serve as direct evidence of conspiracy and further strengthen the legal case against her. In June 2025, Ryan Reynolds filed a biennial statement for the New York Vanzan entity, 4 years overdue, right as the court was deciding whether to compel Vanzan to turn over its corporate records. This move appears reactive, aiming to show formal governance and counter claims that Vanzan is just a sham entity. It also seems designed to shift attention away from Blake Lively's prior involvement with the defunct Delaware and California entities, distancing her from the current legal spotlight. By naming himself CEO now, Ryan is directly tying himself to the New York entity's only significant action we know of, the 2024 lawsuit. The timing is also risky. Courts often see last-minute corporate changes during litigation as attempts to conceal or manipulate the record, which can actually increase suspicion and liability. Some people on Reddit argue that when Blake Lively filed paperwork for the Vanzan entity in California in 2021, the person filling out the form accidentally selected Delaware instead of New York as the state of incorporation. They claim the form was meant to show a New York company doing business in California, not connect Blake to Rothschild's old Delaware entity. According to this argument, it was just a clerical error and doesn't mean anything significant. This claim matters because it's used to explain away inconsistencies in the records. The California paperwork says the company is from Delaware, while the New York entity is completely separate. If the clerical error claim were true, it would mean the California and New York entities are actually the same company, and the difference is just a paperwork mix-up. In reality, the filings show they're distinct and not connected by a simple error. The clerical error claim is often used to defend against accusations of misconduct. If the entities aren't legally connected, it raises questions about why they were used for similar purposes and why Blake Lively filed a lawsuit from a Vanzan entity her name wasn't attached to. By calling it a clerical error, supporters argue it was just a simple mistake, not an intentional attempt to hide anything. The cover-up claims don't hold up for two main reasons. First, the California filings clearly list Delaware as the state of incorporation, including the Delaware corporation number and registration date. There are no New York identifiers anywhere in the document. Second, California requires a formal amendment to correct substantive errors like jurisdiction. No correction has ever been filed since 2021, showing that the clerical error explanation is just an after-the-fact excuse. The New York entity has its own state identification number and no references to Delaware or California anywhere in its filings. If the California entity were truly the same as the New York one, the paperwork would clearly state incorporated in New York, not Delaware. Jurisdiction errors like this are substantive, not clerical. They fundamentally change a company's legal identity. There's no evidence supporting the clerical error claim. The only connection is a shared business address, which is purely circumstantial. In conclusion, the Vanzan entities are legally distinct. There are no formal ties between the Delaware or California entities and the one in New York. Blake Lively's use of the New York entity for a covert lawsuit could expose her to alter ego or conspiracy claims if her control is proven. Ryan Reynolds' recent filing as CEO backfired, directly linking him to the 2024 lawsuit and appearing reactive. Finally, the clerical error explanation is unsupported by the filings and correction protocols. It's simply a distraction from the real issue: strategic corporate distancing. Bottom line: the documents show legally separate entities and deliberate attempts to obscure control. Ryan's recent move doesn't erase earlier misconduct, and the clerical error excuse falls apart under close examination. The real question is, why did they want to connect themselves to the California and Delaware entity originally formed by someone else, and at the same time, why did they work so hard to keep it separate from the New York entity? We explore our theory on all of this in our first deep dive on our YouTube channel.